Wherever you are, welcome to all of you coaches and professionals for today's session. I'll be your host for the evening, Poonam Bhardwaj. I'm an ICF credential coach and also part of the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. Co-host with me for today's webinar is Tushima Mukherjee, also an ICF credential coach and a very active member and part of the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. Handling the complete tech support for today's evening is going to be Anuradha Sant. Anu also leads the learning management group at ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. She's also a master certified coach and very much a part of the Mumbai Charter Chapter, right? So, thank you. And starting over with today's webinar, which is Econowise Building Business Acumen and Overview by Nimesh Rathod. So, about Nimesh, about our speaker for the evening, he's a thinking catalyst with 23 years of professional experience. He has deep insight into the world of finance and economics. As a credentialed coach with about 850 hours of coaching, he works with clients across the spectrum and local macroeconomic environment using the coaching approach. He is impaneled as visiting faculty and facilitator at various management institutes and companies, respectively. His program series Econowise has global footprint across India, Dubai, Russia, and Philippines. And now, one fun fact about our speaker for the evening is that he's also a theater performer and claims that he has perfected the art of making a genie dosa during the lockdown. Well, I'm curious to know what a genie dosa is. So, Nimesh, we might ask you that question during our
but go ahead.
that request, Nimesh. On that note, I'm pleased to turn the session over to you for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure this time to be on the front, trying and talking about this subject of mine, for which I have a lot of passion. You'll see that. Um so let me begin with two stories. Okay. Story number one is that of a chef, uh, a very passionate chef, loves food, loves to make food, loves to serve food to people. Um, is very productively occupied in a multinational chain of hotels. Decides that she's had enough of um, serving an entity. She should chart her own path. She does so very boldly. She decides, makes her potential restaurant's menu, thinks about the target segment, does a lot of homework in terms of ingredients, etc., etc., and finally takes the plunge. Okay, as she begins hosting her restaurant, um, she realizes over a period of time that one of the most important ingredients, um, which she didn't really think about while thinking about food, and which is probably one of the most important ingredients in a restaurant, was the real estate cost. Um, and then every single element of the business starts popping up in terms of cost. And as she's trying to getting adjusted to the new routine, uh, the COVID hit. All right. So after that, what happened is anyone's guess. Story number two: a very passionate doctor, um, a skin specialist, um, or whatever you may call the doctor with. Uh, Very passionate, loves treating patients um, on dermatology. So skin happens to be the specialty. He is so convinced that this is the field in which even at 2 in the middle of the night, um, he would not mind seeing a patient. Um, and in that passion and fervor, He decides, okay, it's time I should start my own practice, my own clinic, and maybe later on expand the clinic to a hospital. As the business starts off, um, he notices some very interesting developments in his clinic. He's a very famous doctor. There's no dearth of patients who want to come and meet him um, in his clinic. But what he realizes very quickly is that the instances of repeat patients start reducing. So that means anybody who comes in first time may come in second time, and then third time onwards, the patient doesn't turn up. There was nothing wrong in the treatment, because the patient does call up once in a while, does take the advice, they still remain in touch, but somehow the visits to the clinic start going down. And then a further set of curiosity based questions led him to discover that what was happening in the reception area, um, in the dermatology clinic, while waiting for meeting the doctor, was the experience which was really catalyst on the negative side. And that means the patients found themselves to be extremely uncomfortable in the company of other patients while waiting for their turn to meet the doctor. Both these stories tell us a story. And so I'm going to break the norm a little bit here with the permission of the hosts. I'm going to invite people to unmute themselves and participate, because this subject very rarely can succeed when it's a one-way monologue. And being a coach, I have a habit of asking questions more than answering questions. So I'm going to keep asking questions. And here's the first one. From these two stories which you just heard, one of the passionate doctor and the other one of the passionate chef, what stands out for you in both these stories?
Nimesh, for me, what stands out is you don't know what you don't know. And that's a very scary thought, actually.
Hmm. Very, very deep thought indeed. Anything else that caught your attention in these two stories?
Sripad here.
Yes.
I think the chef was more talent and skill oriented, but less in terms of customer orientation, whereas doctor was pretty customer oriented. He found out why they are not coming back, and probably he would have put some corrective measures to reduce those incidences.
Interesting. Very nice. Rajesh has written blind spots. Yes,
Um,
I noted that.
Lack of planning, proper planning, and probably not consulted the consultant, business consultant, to uh, look at the small nitty-gritties,
Sounds very interesting,
the
Sagarika,
business.
because these nitty-gritties often, which look nitty-gritties at the first glance, may be pivotal
Yes,
in many ways to sail the boat ahead.
correct.
So I would agree. Yes, could have been overlooked. Let me put it that way. Yes, Shalini says passion is great to get you started. However, there is more needed to make it successful. And that's interesting thought indeed. Having the right business acumen to see through happenings. Um, could you elaborate on this, Bhavini? Improper planning for uncertainties. All right, great. So I think
Can I add something?
yes, please go ahead.
So I think they were clear about their business and they were clear about their customers, but they were not clear and they didn't plan for the environment
Hmm.
within which their enterprise or their customer would be.
Yes, and I
So, for
think
example, for
Bhavani has
example,
just added to what you just said, Anu. Being able to sense why there is a trend like this in each case, um, and that's well said, because I think at the end of the day, Business acumen is all about sensing what's happening in the environment, uh, not only impacting me as a coach, but also impacting my coachee, who may be either an individual in the same environment, or it could be an organization or a part of an organization which may be in a similar environment. And it's extremely important to anticipate what is happening on each of these environments, because that's going to actually alter expectations as well as behavior of all the stakeholders. And so while we are not here to really enable you to improve your skills as a coach, I think here what the objective of today's session is to help you, to sensitize you to the environment in which we exist. And often that environment can be make or break in terms of our strategies. And we'll take a few examples here. Great. I would love to carry on and give you a game to play, but I just saw a couple of comments, so I let me just take it up. It's about overall experience and customer centricity. Absolutely. The doctor saw his patients as patients and not as customers. And that's an interesting comment as well. Um, so I'm going to share my screen here. Allow me to share my screen, and let's play a game here. Okay. It's a game of logic. So let's see how we can apply some logic here. All right. So a quick check. Could you say thumbs up if you are seeing the screen with the word Econowise written there? All right. I saw a few thumbs up already. So thank you for that confirmation. Yes, the game of logic. Take a close look at the screen that you see in front of you. Okay, take your time and give me your judgment of what this game is all about. And don't worry if you're wrong or right. Just give me your logical answer to what could this game be all about.
Watering the plants.
All right, that sounds like the most logical start. Yes. And is there anything else that you can see apart from the fact that yes, the plants need to be watered?
It's also about maintaining a certain level of
Okay.
water.
Okay, very good. So there seems to be some element of level management of the water. There obviously are some plants with flowers, and then there is a central handle in the center. I presume you can see that very clearly. There's something written there as well.
Yes.
So if you look at the top, it says close up, and that means in that position, the water flow will be completely stopped. And what it says below is open down. So if you take the handle down, that will completely open the throttle or fully open the pipe for all the water to flow through. Right? That's essentially the first picture that you're seeing here. Let's see what happens if we close up the handle. Okay. All right. So anybody wants to attempt? What exactly happened? What did you observe? What changes? Um, what is on the screen now?
It was the filling of the tank.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Could you repeat that, please?
What I wanted to say was it is the close up and the open down, which we thought was earlier responsible for watering the plants, is actually not for watering the plants, but really the filling of this tank, which is why after it was turned to close up, the minimum level was reached, and eventually there was no water left.
Beautiful. Is there anything else that you observed in the screen?
It dried the plants.
It dried the plant. So that means once the tap is fully closed, water simply disappears and the plants die off. And that means there is some significance of the minimum level. Now let's try the other way around. Let's see what happens then. This is part 1 and this is part 2. Over to you again. What did you notice?
I think excess of the water was as dysfunctional as no water.
Beautiful. And what else did you notice?
Only one side of the plants have.
Only one side of the plants have survived.
Right. So that means that it doesn't seem to affect all the plants in the same fashion.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Let's take the game forward. I'm going to give you a few more variables to guess. Now you will have the control of the handle. So as you see the new variable, you tell me whether I should push the handle up or down. Now, mind you, if the handle is in the center, it is not closed or open. It is halfway open. And that means water would still be flowing in. All right. Now, here's the first variable. Take a guess. Where should I move the handle?
When they turn all green,
Close up.
Also, give me the logic of why.
Because it's going to rain.
All right, so it's going to naturally fill up the water even in the open side of the tank, and thereby you need to close up, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
I could wait and see. It may rain.
It may rain. So should we wait or should we close up? Or should we close up as it starts raining?
Maybe as it starts raining.
All right.
Nimesh.
Here's the second variable. Now what do we do?
So
Should we keep it as it is? Should we change the handle? What's your take?
Open down partially.
Open down partially, because it may lead to a little bit of evaporation, correct?
Yeah.
It also depends on the environment where this thing was made to serve.
Lovely. Lovely. So the ambient temperature will matter a lot. That's what you're saying.
Correct. Yes. So depending on that, you've already moderated the flow.
Right.
So hence, it really depends on the environment.
Right. Toshima, could you also keep reading out what's been written on the chat box, because I won't be able to have access to it right now while I'm sharing my screen.
Sure.
Great. Yes, variable number 3.
okay.
Tell me what to do quickly.
Close up.
Down completely.
So that
Big
means now the
close up.
intensity of closure has to be very fast. Otherwise, it's going to flood
Quickly.
the whole thing, right?
Big time.
So it's close up.
Yes, very quickly close up.
All right. Interesting. Well, this is lovely bit of game that we're playing. And I am, since we're playing this game, we'll have one more round of conversations. That will be another game. And then the challenge for you is to link the two games. And the hint is, it's not really a game. So I'll repeat. We're going to have one more element of conversations. You'll have to link whatever we just experienced with those conversations. And the hint is, it's not really a game. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and kindly help the team to bring in spotlights. I'm going to request a few people to volunteer for this activity. Don't worry, we're going to not trouble you too much. We'll just ask you a few simple, logical questions about money flow. And you're free to, there are no right or wrong answers. You're free to respond to these questions as you feel all right. Okay, so here, let me stop my sharing. Volunteers, please. Simple money related questions from day-to-day life. Nothing exotic out of this world. All right, Preeti, I can see that hand going up. May I request the tech support to spotlight Preeti?
She needs to put on her video for me to do that.
Yes, Preeti, would you mind?
I've done that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, now it is on.
Very good. Thank you. We need at least 3 more volunteers.
Please raise your hands. Those of you who would.
And if you wish, you can raise your hand or type in the chat box so that we
Yeah.
immediately. Okay, Anna Durai has already indicated. Kindly put him on the spotlight as well. Thank you for volunteering. We'll need 2 more. Don't worry, it's always good to have the spotlight on you while we are discussing money. There's no better subject to be under the spotlight.
Anybody? We need 2 more volunteers.
I know a few people in the group, so I don't want to call them out because they are my backup volunteers.
Okay, Sudharan.
Okay, Sudharan, please come on the screen.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you for doing that. I can promise you none of these are my pre-decided volunteers, and they can vouch for it as well. All right, one more volunteer, please, and that'll be fantastic. And it'll probably be a record of sorts because we never had 4 volunteers ever.
Okay, Sunil Chabar.
So far.
Sunil Chabar has volunteered.
All right, Sunil, kindly put on the video, and tech, please put the spotlight. Okay, everybody who's volunteered, may I request you to unmute yourselves because we're going to have a nice little chat here, conversation. Okay. So Sunil, can you unmute yourself? Great. Thank you for all of you for volunteering. Here's my question. First, we will request you to rewind in time, okay, and go back in time, maybe 20, 25 years or more, when you were fresh out of your college education and you just started working. Okay, so let's say you were all of the age of Preeti. And what we need to do now is I'm going to throw some questions on you in terms of you made this amount of money. Okay, you've got to just react. What would you do with this money, right? And whatever comes to your mind is a correct answer. So don't worry. This is not a test. So it is. You're just out of your education. You've just picked up your first job. Life is fantastic. You're full of ambitions, aspirations. But this is the first time you're going to get money at home, and you received the first 30,000 rupees ever in your life. First earning 30,000 rupees. Quickly out with what would you do with this first 30,000?
I would divide them into segments.
Okay.
And because it's my first salary, I would give it to my parents first.
Lovely.
But a part of it, and then a part of it, I might put it into a savings fund.
Okay.
Maybe the other one for recreation, entertainment purposes, and the last part would be. Okay, I'm confused between two. So there could be an investment or spending on myself. So
yeah, remember you were fresh out of college, so whatever the priorities then would be the priorities.
Maybe not so much investment. I think I'll spend on myself.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sudharan, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I will do is at this age, my first preference should be give it to my parents 50% money because of that I am today whatever I am. And remaining 50% I will segregate into 2-3 areas. One could be my own development, what I can do with this money if I want to earn more. So where I will invest my money. It could be education, further upgrading my skills or something, or it could be second piece could be a long-term protection of my own future. Like if I start earning little, how I will reach the goal. So that could be another piece. And maybe 5% of it or less than 10%, I will keep it for socializing, doing some volunteer work or helping others or even spending for my friends or something.
Partying.
Yeah, partying also.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Sunil?
Yes, what I will do is I will first hand over the check, if it is a check, to my mom. That is what I did, and take her blessings for that. And after she returns, she actually returned it to me. I put something for the temple and donated some money. And of course, balance, I kept it in the bank and bought some new clothes, and up my clothes and my wardrobe I changed. So, and spend some for socializing. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Another eye.
Yeah, mostly, I mean, there's a lot of expectations and a lot of efforts from parents.
You're possibly missing your voice a little. Can you come closer to the mic?
Okay, yeah, I will do one thing. I will just give me a second. Sorry.
Go ahead. Much better.
This is okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that's what first parents and a lot of prathanas and dues and keep aside the money for parents. And then when I got my first salary, I was married. So so my wife's choice, what all that she wanted to do, her dreams, and her wanting to do. And then, it's a big family, family, bringing family together and going out and stuff like that. Didn't think too much about the future at that point in time. The first salary just freak out.
Excellent. And as you guys were thinking about your first salary and the first amount of money that came to your bank, you had a fantastic stroke of luck and you received 1 lakh each almost immediately. Now, what would you do with this 1 lakh? We'll go the reverse cycle. Anna, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I will. This is something I learned. I will put in something to upskill me. I mean, always you come this far, but to be able to go to the next level, what it takes, put some money in upskilling, and then some down payment for the durables at home.
Sure.
You always want that.
Sure.
You don't start life with your everything. So
sure.
If TV is important, TV. If whatever, car is important, car. The comforts and durable, that comes second. And start. I mean, giving has always been in the thing, that because a lot of people have given to me. So somehow goes to giving, and
Sure.
then investing comes last.
All right. Thank you so much for being so spontaneous. Sunil, over to you.
Yeah, 1 lakh. What comes to my mind is to invest in property. That is what I did also. And the second is upgrade my standards. That is, as you mentioned, getting some installments for car or etc. So upgrade myself in my living style, and investing in property was the main thing which I did. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sudharan.
Yeah, I will look at the three areas. One is any dues or commitments that my parents or my family has got, just to try to help that and fix that problem. And second part will go for my own upgradation of my long-term future, maybe a higher studies or a knowledge or a skill, whatever it is, that will go second. And the third piece I will do is I will look at that I will divide further into two areas. One could be my own shelter, the place where I want to be in my life rest of the time. And also I will try to invest some money for my long-term growth.
Sure. Thank you. Preeti?
I will clear off the debts if there were any and invest the remaining.
Sure. And as you guys were taking action on this 1 lakh, suddenly you got a message that, gentlemen and the lady, that transfer was by mistake because we are supposed to give you only 50,000. So kindly make sure that you return the 50,000 which has come to you by mistake. Now what happens?
I'll renegotiate the schedule, 4 or 5 or 6 installments.
Okay.
Instead of calling anything back.
Sure. Sunil?
Well, that's a shock, and definitely I will try to retrieve whatever I have invested in my property. But yeah, of course, it could not be complete return then. I could manage in that 50,000.
Okay. Sudharan?
I will prioritize what I have. Accordingly, I will distribute my money again, but maybe not in the same proportion, but little lower.
Preeti?
I'll go ahead with the debts in that 50,000 and 50,000. I'll bring it back in terms of the investment and give it back.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to open up the question for the audience who've been watching us. What trends did you observe in the audience? And if you have noticed some trends, please highlight it for us. I'll repeat the question. As the respondents were responding, they were giving answers. What trends did you notice?
Hi, Nimesh, Jyotsna here.
Yes.
So one thing that I think instinctively happened with all of them and probably all of us too is that the first thing when we have money, which is something that you decide on using your mind and logic, we were actually using emotion when we had that bundle in our hand.
Very pertinent point. Yes.
Across.
And then what happened to those emotions as the tide turned?
I think logic started to kick in a little more.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes.
There's some comments coming in the chat box also, Nimesh. So
please go ahead and read out.
Yeah. So Kannan says when the quantum is higher, you start looking at the long term. And Sunil says resource management, water and money are very critical in our planning. Yes. So.
Right. Is there anything else that you observed in the body language of these participants the moment I told them 1 lakh? And then I told them, give me back the 50,000. Did anything change? And I would love to ask the participants as well. Did something change in you when I said, oh, 50,000, please return?
Yeah, it sort of, I thought how I will manage to do it, but then I immediately calculated it is okay. It is manageable.
Sure.
For me, it was, For me, it was a quick shock, but immediately my brain said that, okay, you need to adopt something you expected, but it didn't happen quickly. So what else we can do with that? So something is at least still better than nothing you have with you. So 50 is also not bad. So that kind of a feeling.
Sure. Anything that happened with you, Anna?
When you were coming with the third scenario, I anticipated two things, whether it is 10 lakh or reverse. So it was a 50%. My mind was in the guessing mode. So it was 5. I got that 50%. 50% of 50%, that is 50,000.
Yes. All right. So the first part was, what is he telling me? Is it telling me that it's gone 100% or some part of it is still staying with me?
Some part of it still staying with me. At 30,000 salary, 50,000 is not big deal.
Sure. Perfect. Preeti?
I think it was more of, it didn't take me by shock at all. It was like, it's sorted kind of a thing. I know that I want to clear off my debts. The investment can happen later. So it was okay.
Interesting. Thank you so much. First, a big round of applause from me and from the rest of the audience for volunteering. We're going to now release your time and thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And while I go back and share my screen, Tushima, could you just read out what Poonam is saying?
Sure. So Poonam was talking about the sudden look of shock on everyone's faces, and then back to a more controlled stance as people regained, their wits about them and then figured out what to do next.
All right.
Yeah. And Sunil mentioned very interestingly that scarcity and abundance both lead to emotions of shock and happiness.
Very true. Um, so my question now is, I invite the audience to connect the conversation we just had with what you saw in the game, which we played a little while ago. I'll repeat the question. Uh, we played a game some time back of watering the flowers. When you push the handle up, the flowers dried off. When you push the handle down, after a while, with excess water, again, some flowers died off, not all. Um, and then we had this conversation with our volunteers. What's the connect between the two, if at all?
I think the water flow management uh, has a relationship with the fund flow management of financials.
All right, very good. Why do you say that?
Depending on the exigency, the external factors, what is high impact within your control, you should be regulating and adapting to the situation.
Interesting. Anybody else?
The Sripad here.
Yes,
The importance of having an emergency stockpile, some kind of a buffer to tide over in case the tank dries up. You still have the emergency buffer. So I think that part didn't come anywhere. That you are building a stockpile of 3 months of emergency cash or 6 months of emergency cash. So this particular tank example is also similar. Like if there is an emergency water always kept in the lower tank, then that can help you. Just in case there is a deluge, you can always shut up the cock. But if there is a dry up, you already have an emergency stockpile.
Very interesting interpretation, Shripad. Anybody else? What's the thought? How is this connected to what we just did in the conversation?
So there are some comments in the chat box. Nimesh, do you want me to read them out now?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so uncertainty and finding a balance. That's one. And then there are resources we need. We need to match the demand and supply depending on the situation. Response to the current scenario changes based on alternatives that we carefully think about. Okay, and Preeti says, I think pivoting and considering the environment is a must.
Preeti, could you elaborate a little bit more?
What I meant is with the different factors in the first game that you were exposing us to, pivoting was very important, which is considering which direction to take or just being more fluid about the strategy. Considering the environment, of course, is again going back to the first game that we played was very important because your strategies would be based on the environment that you're performing in. So these were the two important factors.
True. Very interesting. So you're saying it somehow brings the thought of the pivotal element, and pivoting to the environment is an extremely important aspect of any profession. Have I understood that correct?
That is true. Absolutely.
Superb. Any other comments, Toshima, on the chat before we
Yeah. So there was one comment from Sunil Kshatri who says prioritization of resources depending upon how much you have. So where and how much depending on your current needs.
That's interesting, Sunil. If possible, could you give us some kind of a further insight on what you are just thinking?
Yeah, so Nimesh, what I was trying to say over here was that I look at water and money as resource in the two separate games that we have played.
Right.
So the utilization of these will depend on your needs and your values at that moment. Right. So if your needs are to take care of your current needs, then you will definitely use them for now. And then depending upon how you want your future to be, you would like to prioritize the resources for that, making your future bright, assuming that your current has been taken care
of. Great. Thank you so much for that interpretation.
Nimesh, one comment from me.
Yeah, please.
I think irrespective of the level of water flow, some plants survive. Irrespective of the level of cash flow, some needs have to be met or kept going either on its own or by design or by default.
Sure. And even in the group, some people said, well, it made no difference to me. While some were shocked. All right. So that means the change in water level does not impact all the plants in the same fashion. Or if I were to put it in money terms, the change of money doesn't impact all the people equally. And interestingly, just like the game, it seemed that was true even in our conversations. Okay, so thanks for bringing that up. If this is not a game, and if this is not water, and if these are not plants, and these levels aren't water levels, then what are they? So I'm saying none of it is a game. This is not water that you see, and the handle is not actually a handle, and the closing of the tap is not actually closing of a water tap. Neither is the opening actually opening of the tap. The plants aren't the plants, and the levels of water aren't the levels of water. Then what are we talking of here? And Tushima, be alert in case people type away. Do share it with us.
My eyes are glued to the screen.
Thank you.
Okay, it could well be the business, the plants as customers, and water as the efforts. Okay, so this could be money flow.
Okay. So the first I heard was water could be the effort, and the plant could be business, and that's an interesting thought.
Plants could be customers.
Plant could be customers.
Yeah,
okay.
so this is like the business cycle or the business scenario.
Okay. And could you name the person who's mentioned this?
Kanan.
So Kanan, would you want to elaborate this? Why do you say what you said? I'm sorry, I'm catching you.
Yeah, Nimesh.
Spirit on conversation. So that's how I would love people to talk.
Sure, Nimesh. So I thought this is more water in my head was more about the conscious, intentional sales effort that you take, or the so-called business mindset. Sometimes you might feel that you've done enough and the customers will continue as it is even if you don't do anything. That is not true. You still need to do something to keep them alive or to keep them growing. And again, the effort is like the building that pipeline. Every plant has its own life cycle, and how long can you really water them and nurture them? It will go through its cycle. So there need to be a need for new plants coming up as well, and for that requires so-called water, which is nothing but the effort.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. And honestly, I had not thought of it that way, and that's why I'm so delighted that you elaborated this, because whatever you said sounds very, very logical. Anybody else? How would you interpret the picture in front of you and connect it to what the discussion we just had?
So Nimesh, Anu talked about money flow.
Yeah.
Which is water is equal to cash is equal to liquidity. Too less or too much is detrimental.
Okay.
And Arvind mentioned that this seems to him to be mind making a decision.
That's again interesting. So may I invite both Arvind and then Anu to elaborate your points, please? Thank you.
Hi, Nimesh. So I just thought it's the mind. It's getting there is something needs to be done. And there's an environment, and I need some resources. I need to control the resources. So I'm just taking a decision of opening or closing.
Wow.
Depending on how much I have, how much is coming by virtue of this 1 lakh, and then 50,000 you're taking away. So like somebody said, the clouds are there and it might rain or not rain, or it might flood. So depending on that. So it's really a decision-making process or a map, something like that.
Brilliant. And it could actually, the flowers could be the actions or the thoughts which you would do after the mind gives you the direction.
Correct.
All right, awesome. Yes, Anu, why do you say money flow?
So I was just trying to make the analogy between the money and the cash and water. So water also flows, and you have here you have depicted it as water, which and you have a lever to control the flow, stop it, or restart it. Similarly, there is cash, which we do have certain amount of control over the cash flow, and so I'm just trying to kind of play with words here to say liquid equal to liquidity. So too much is also bad. Too much, you saw the plants wither away because there was too much water. Too less is also not good because then they dry up. So you just need optimum levels to sustain. So it's between the nurturing of what needs we have. If we have too much, then it's waste. Too less, then it dries it up. So that's what I was trying to say.
Excellent, and that's a great analogy. And going by what you just said, we are going to just replace the water with something, and it is money. All right, so the water is not water, but it is money flow into the company, the country, the business, whatever you're handling. Okay, uh, and if this is money flow, what is equivalent to the handle? So let's say if this is our country, this is India, or any country that you have logged in from, Malaysia or Singapore, um, or Ukraine, or wherever you're coming from. If this is money flow into your country, then what does the handle represent?
Monetary policy.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. So who handles monetary policy usually?
The people who govern.
Indeed. And in
RBI.
India, sorry, yes, I
RBI.
RBI.
Central
RBI.
Bank.
Central Bank is the global connotation. In India, we call it RBI, or Reserve Bank of India, largely because we have a bank called Central Bank in India, which is actually a public sector bank. But the moment you move out of India, it is largely known as the Central Bank. United States, they call it the Federal Reserve, or Fed. And all of these people handle their respective monetary policies. And this blue handle is nothing but essentially the lever which they will control so that money supply in any economy gets controlled. Okay. Now, please tell me, when the central bank moves the lever up in practical sense, in real life, for the business, what exactly are they doing?
Increase the interest rates.
Beautiful. And if the interest rates are increased, that means money becomes costlier. How does it change the environment for all of us, for you as a coach, for your client who is in the same environment and maybe facing the same higher interest rate?
There's a liquidity crunch.
I heard two people saying, I'm so happy. Two people are talking at the same time, but can we talk one at a time? So my question, I'll repeat. When the RBI in India, or Federal Reserve in the US, or central bank anywhere else, when they increase the interest rates, what exactly happens to business? What exactly happens to the company where I'm coaching? What exactly happens to the coachee who is working in a company or who's on his own running a business?
The cost of the operations increase.
Okay, great. And hence what would happen? Very good. We are on the track.
Liquidity crunch, cost of capital is high, so you have less disposable income.
Beautiful. So when you have less disposable income, what happens to their ability to spend?
Yeah, the mandatory expenses continue, the discretionary expenses are cut down.
Correct. Which means we go to the look on the faces and the actions that people talked about when we said, okay, 50,000, I need to withdraw. And then everybody had a different way of handling that situation. Somebody said, okay, I'll relook at the cost. I will stop spending unnecessary. Someone said, well, nothing, no difference to me. So all of these reactions will happen as the central bank increases the interest rate. Okay. Eventually, what this will lead to is lower inflation. I don't know whether I make sense to you. So I invite you to comment on this particular aspect. I'm saying when the central bank increases the interest rate, it actually lowers the inflation in the economy in which this company is based. Have you understood it? If no, it's my fault. So you have to just pop up and say, I have no clue what you're talking. And then we'll explain to you in some other example. While I can see 23 comments, I'm sure if it is something that needs to be read out, you would, Sushi.
Yeah. Okay, so some answers are coming in. Okay. Demand slows down. And Meghna has understood and says you can move on.
Okay.
Okay, so Arvind's tried to explain it. So people have less money to buy. So prices fall because demand falls. And then Rajesh adds on by saying there's less money flow, which therefore lowers the inflation.
Interesting. And let's connect this further. What do you expect your corporate client who's engaged you as a coach over the last couple of years, if you were to go through this situation right while your coaching assignment is on?
So there's a question here, Nimesh.
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain the inflation connection now?
Oh, okay. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Fine. May I know who's asked this?
Anu.
Okay. So Anu, very clearly, as you have less discretionary spend, all right, chances that you go out and consume would be that much lesser. And now imagine if you're a seller of goods, when you sell less goods, what would happen to your sales?
Will go down.
It'll go down. Now, when your stocks are unsold, what do you tend to do to ensure that there is some sale that happens?
You'll do a sale.
Yes.
Discount.
That means you'll reduce the prices.
Okay.
When you reduce the prices, what happens to inflation?
Okay, will go down. Fair enough.
Great. So that means somewhere when the interest rate goes up, inflation starts going down. My question to all of you is, let's say while this is happening, RBI is busy doing its job, whatever it's doing. We were in a contractual agreement with a corporate client, and they had said, look, let's start with this assignment. You'll be coaching a good 50 people in our organization, but we will start with the first 5. And while you're doing coaching with these first 5, this happens. Okay, so the external environment changes, interest rate goes up, the economy starts moving towards the lower inflation band. Please tell me, what should you anticipate from the client side on your assignment?
So while people are processing your question, Nimesh, there's a question in the chat box from Preeti. Should I ask that now?
Just hang on for a moment because it may disrupt
Sure.
thought flow of others.
Sure.
And I'll definitely answer that question of Preeti. So I'll repeat the question. What should you expect your client to behave like while you're engaged with them already? So there is an assignment. You've started with the first 5 leaders, maybe the top 5 leaders. They promised you a total clientele of 50 leaders within your organization. They're saying after the first 5 go through, we will talk about the balance 45. In the meanwhile, all of this happened.
So there are some comments coming in response to your question, Nimesh.
Go ahead.
Okay, they're coming in. There are lots of comments. Okay, cut down on coaching, reduce your coaching fee or postpone future engagements, suspend stalling of further business, reduced scope. So basically a lot of comments pointing to shrinking amounts of business, Nimesh.
Sure. And why do you think this happens? Interestingly, while it happens, if you had not been alert to this environment, what would be your conclusion? Suppose we didn't tell you the story about what's happening outside, how the central bank has jacked up the interest rate, how the organization is seeing a fall in sales. The revenues are falling, the profitability is falling, there is a margin squeeze, there is a company-wide cost-cutting environment that has been brought in through new directives. And unfortunately for you, the budget which was sitting on top of the initiative that was taken for coaching has been chopped to half. All right. All of this you won't know. All you would know is a cryptic couple of lines of message, or probably a nice, polite conversation saying, we really love your presence, and we really have a fantastic feedback. However, there is some glitch, at our end. And may I request you to have patience, because we may take a little bit more longer than what we had thought earlier to starting the phase 2. So while phase 1 is on, we are taking a temporary pause in the phase 1 as well. And we'll come back to you. And while you receive this information, what would be your conclusion as a professional?
So there are already a couple of responses to that in the chat box.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So Ashok says perceived value proposition of coaching. Preeti says something wrong with my coaching. I'm not effective as a coach. Maybe the feedback about me is not that great. Kanan says, yeah.
And that's so natural for us to believe, isn't it?
Or is there someone else offering better coaching at a lower price?
Yeah. What if there is somebody else who's gone a little bit more desperate, because he may have committed to some car EMI which we haven't, and as a process of making sure that the car does not have to be returned, you never know, and that means a lot of times the external environment acts up, and chances are, as a coach, I may blame myself, think, okay, there seems to be something wrong with me.
And to add to that, Ajit says, we are more convinced that coaching cannot be a standalone business. Other revenue streams are now necessary.
Yes. And then suddenly you start feeling, okay, I seem to have made a mistake of being dependent 100% on coaching revenue. Now what do I do? Okay. And usually, had you not been a coach, and had you been a service provider, or had you been a trader, or had you been a manufacturer, or had you been a hotelier, interestingly, your conclusion would exactly be the same as you would do as a coach, because suddenly you would find that there is restriction on the existing clients spending money on your projects, largely because liquidity has vanished at their end. Okay, and that means this is a universal phenomenon. Interestingly, most of us would possibly blame ourselves. So much so that some of us may actually go out and say, okay, I need some additional education on coaching. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I need some more certifications. Maybe I need to go out and pick up a course which is going to add some more feathers to me, so that people don't cancel halfway through. All right, we'll take the question of Preeti now. Kushima?
Yeah. So Preeti's question was, so going back to the entire question of inflation and so on. So does this mean that people are investing more due to a higher interest rate, and hence they don't have more disposable income?
Pretty good question. Let me put it this way. Let's say your client is having a business of manufacturing. Okay, I'm just guessing in the wild that, okay, you'll have a client who's a manufacturer. And what happens is, when the interest rate goes up, would it be a fair assumption that if they borrowed money from the banker, they would also have to pay that higher interest rate? And if the answer is yes, that means whether they like it or no, whether they want it or no, suddenly the banker comes in and debits the interest amount in their account. Now, if that sudden unforeseen interest change led to exit of a few lakh of rupees, they still have to pay salaries. So if they have to pay salaries, and if they have to pay a supplier, who would they say come later? Obviously supplier. And we happen to be one of those vendors who they might say, please come later, because right now it's our ship which is in a storm, and we would rather save our own people first. And that's very natural. That's what possibly you would also do as well. Okay, that's a time when if your clientele is a sales executive, or a sales head, or the chief sales officer, you can expect a storm in terms of his approach. Tell me why. How many of you have somebody from the sales function as your client? What would you expect in a scenario where interest rate has just gone up and the inflation is on the downward trend, the sales are falling, there's solid pressure on the sales to meet the targets? What kind of mental makeup are you expecting there?
Lots of stress, anxiety, not being able to perform, not being able to get the revenue that was initially planned.
Indeed. And that means they would be screaming for a coaching conversation, but the team would say, sorry, while we would love to have coaching, but we can't afford you. And that dilemma will start popping up. Okay, because while they want their people to be coached, chances are that your existing fees or the fees which we started with you seem to be now a little bit on the higher side given our new cuts in budget. So that would be your first dilemma. Second dilemma, the sales, let's say is the vice president sales. You are coaching him. Suddenly he says, sorry, I need to cancel the next 3 sessions. Reason? Oh, well, I need to go and sit at the client's head. Our daily sales outstanding has just jumped through the roof. And I'm on the hot seat because if I don't recover this payment, we may have challenges in working capital 2 months down the line. And that means he picks up his bag and physically goes off to the client location to try and recover whatever is the due outstanding. So even the due money doesn't come in these times, because people will conserve the money to pay off their employees before they pay off their vendors. Right. So that's a very interesting phase. Yes.
Hi, this is Sunanda here. I just wanted to add that, coaching is also perceived as a skill that can be maybe developed in-house. So one of the things that people start doing in such times is that, get their own people to either skill up in coaching and then be able to, coach their own team.
Yeah.
Alternatively, it's something that's, seen as, the easiest cut, because coaching at the end of the day is not seen by corporates as a profession that is a specialized one, and which is deemed as something that can be developed by anybody.
Indeed, so well said. In fact, to be honest, the perception in the mind of the business owner is, yeah, that is important. Coaching is definitely important, but right now it's survival at stake. So we will look at all of these issues once we are sure that we'll survive. Okay, so the whole focus comes down to the basics, and the basics would mean we need to make sure that our salaries are paid. We need to make sure that the material that we bought for is paid, and anything else which comes later after those priorities will have to wait. Okay, so at the top, the instruction levels are very clear and clinical. They will say all secondary expenses will have to wait, and then of course that is sugar coated at times and conveyed to us. Sometimes it would be better off if they convey to us straight and bland and straight up, but most of the time the communication comes sugar coated. But I agree with you. At times the temptation for them is because let's say if the HR keeps on insisting we want coaching, they will say, all right, you want coaching, develop in-house. In any case, we have a large lot of people not having too much of work. Maybe we'll give them this work. Go ahead and coach the people inside the organization. And typically, the approach to in-house development of coaches starts when they calculate the total number of hours that they will have to spend on the total number of people that need coaching inside the organization. Okay, and some time back we had this webinar with a panel, and you should have seen what they kept on saying all the while. They said, please give us better costing. We can't afford. We have 2,000 people. Now, if you ask me to pay 20,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees per coaching session, by the time I keep the multiplication on, I may be asked to come in the next meeting. So there's a big challenge there, especially when the cycle is down. Okay, and
yes, and sorry to add to that, I would also say that it's because coaching does not show tangible results immediately.
Fair.
and as therefore it is considered as something that can be easily, chopped off or done at a later period of time, or the talent that can be, skill that can be developed in-house. Put your managers through a little, 2-3 days of coaching training, and then the next thing you know that they are coaches.
Yes. Would anybody want to react to this? I don't want to comment as of now. I just want to open this up for the whole group to react to.
Folks, the floor is open.
Floor is open.
I think I would like to express, I completely agree with what, sorry, Sunanda, was that?
Yes, Sunanda.
Yeah, Sunanda.
Absolutely correct. And it is, it's very unfortunate that they expect somebody with technical skills, maybe a sales manager, to become a coach or have a coach approach towards his team. And they think that this is going to solve the problem. And they very much, there are organizations running on this belief. So yeah, completely agree.
So Preeti, just to add to what you're saying, take a look at it from the eyes of the entrepreneur. Okay, the entrepreneur knows that it is all not going to work out. Okay, getting the line guy to coach his own subordinate is not going to work out. Right. Having said this, one thing is clear in the mind of the entrepreneur or whoever is at the top, saying, I don't have the money to spend. What do you want to do? So that's the choice given to the team which is executing this project, saying, hey, sorry, I know the budget was sanctioned. I know you guys you're doing a brilliant job. Sorry, the situation is turned around. We can't give you this money. Okay, now you have two choices. Either you stop the program here and now, and then we'll see once the situation comes back to normal. And if you feel that's going to demotivate people because you are in charge of motivation, why don't you do one thing? Why don't you explore some other zero cost initiatives which will help you continue with this coaching program? All right, Preeti. So a lot of times it is not that they don't understand. Okay, a lot of times it is probably we who don't understand what's happening at the business level. Now, I want to throw in a question here. While I completely continue to agree with what these two ladies have popped up, and it's a fairly important issue. How can you, as a coach, anticipate this situation that, okay, this is likely to happen, and then what can you do about it?
Before we get into that, there's just one more thing that I wanted to add. I've been on the business side and I'm now into coaching. Sure. And apart from the fact that, coaching is not, the tangible results are not evident very quickly. I think the other issue is that we as coaches are not able to put forward and articulate the value that we are bringing. I think a lot of it is also because, we ourselves fail in that.
So let me challenge the thought here, okay? And the challenge is, how do we make a proposition which is win-win in the situation which I just described? So you know that they are now onto a cost-cutting scenario. You know that they're likely to have a lower sales and lower profit margins, and you still want to ensure that they deliver the output that they had promised or you had promised to deliver. What proposition would you bring in?
I think one of the things that one can do is maybe, look at continuing with the services and, understand the client's need. And, either look at, maybe a staggered payment schedule or, right. Or see that, what is it that, maybe you can throw in a couple more, more sessions or give freebies, like, kind of coaching more people, understanding what the client wants, what their need is, or tell them that, this change is happening. This is how the people will be affected. So why don't we do a group or a team coaching kind of a thing?
Beautiful. That means you're trying to anticipate and getting ready with an offering which is going to help them cut the cost, which in any case they have to. All right. So the challenge for us as a coach is, don't wait for the sword to fall and then, get into the the pontification area of saying, okay, these guys don't understand what they're missing out. But the point is, even if they know what they're missing out, they're still going to go away because their priorities have changed largely thanks to the environment. Okay, it's not in their control. And hence, for a coach, if I anticipate this, business acumen says, all right, now they're likely to face music on the margins front, and that music is going to come to my door eventually, maybe 3 months down the line. Before it comes, can I bring in a proposition where on their own they go out and propose cut in costs?
So Nimesh, the chat box is lighting up.
Okay.
In response to, to your question. Okay.
Yes.
So Ajit says, as a coach, we need to scan the environment, catch trends and respond, which is just, exactly what you were talking about.
Yes.
Bhavani says, change your focus on coaching for the current crisis instead of executive coaching. Sunil says, Sunil says, propose that payment could be made when funds are available, and also make a new proposition with some more value adding exercises or sessions.
Brilliant.
Okay, Ajit as well as Anu say offer pay later option or defer payments. Okay, very interesting. From Meghna, she says link payments to results. And Ashok concurs with her and says that that's what Marshall Goldsmith also offers.
So I'm coming back to that point of link payment to results.
Link payments to results.
Yeah. Meghna, it's a very, very thin ice for the simple reason the only thing that can prove that results have been delivered is data. Okay, and you would need data before, while, and after you finish your intervention. And this data needs to be acceptable not only to you but to them. So it is thin ice. Not that you're completely out of tune, but I would encourage you to try it out and see, at least experience the fun that comes with linking results to fees. Having said this, logically, what you are saying makes sense, but it is thin ice.
There's a real situation that happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Meghna.
No, I was just commenting it's better than the engagement coming to a standstill, right?
Agreed. मैं कहना बोल रहा हूँ. In fact, I am saying whatever we do in that scenario is much better than waiting for the whole thing to stop.
Yeah. So by results, I meant the success factors that you would have established anyway at the beginning of engagement. You do have something quantified that you as a coach as well as the corporate are agreeing on, right? So it's
maybe Meghna, what could possibly also be added is the spectrum of cost cutting. Saying if you want to add some more goals on cost cutting, I would be more than willing to discuss it.
That's one way to go.
Yeah, because that's fire on their end. Okay, whether we like it or no.
Yeah,
it is something which is top of the mind for them. And honestly, it is top of the mind on the coachee, top of the mind on the manager, top of the mind across the organization.
Sure.
Yes, I have a point to offer.
Yes, Ashok.
May I am responding to what Meghna said, which I agreed to. And my point is that when you're making an offer of delivering certain results through the coaching process, then like Marshall Goldsmith, of course, he's a very eminent personality, so he can take those risks. So in our case, what happens is that when we are offering something, we are tying it to the results, but we can actually cement that by rehashing the agreement and ask the client to state what his expectations would be in a measurable way. Am I clear, sir?
Sounds very good. In terms of what you just mentioned, Ashok, possibly the discussion should precede a situation which we are just talking about. So I think then it will really help. If we are able to crystallize the results on a common understanding or a common unit of measurement, um, while we seal the agreement with them, I think that would really help in the long run. Sure.
So the current environment is one where they are stopping an ongoing process.
Yeah.
One can discern whether the value added during the course of the engagement would ensure continuity, and then seek their assistance to have a kind of win-win situation to freeze the results. That's where my mindset is.
Sounds very interesting. Very interesting. I think a lot of it is how we proposition this and when we proposition this to the client. If they have already made up their mind about pausing, I think it's going to be very difficult to go back, because probably 3 levels have already concluded that we need to pause. Before they start discussing, if we were to actually throw in this proposal saying, I know this situation is just about around the corner, if required, we could really do something here. And I think then the life of the project continues a little longer, is how I would feel. Yes, Anna, you had a experience to share. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, 2 situations happened with one of my clients where there are 3-4 countries across the region, and small. I mean, every country 3-4 people, 2-3 people like. So once what happened is this country is not making money. This country really cannot afford, but I can't exclude. But I can't put it in my P&L. Okay. So I said, without creating a precedent, I'm giving you a blank check for that country for the next 1 year.
You decide the amount.
Yeah.
Correct.
The other situation, slightly different, was when I started actually in the initial stage of my assignment, I had a particular fee and I had a particular offering, just one offering. And then two people. Then he said that I see the benefit, but I don't think it should be restricted only to people at some level. I have more people. They can be at the second and third level, but I don't know I can really afford this fee, which has been initially fixed.
Right.
And then I had to say that my commitment remains the same. Everything is same, but the offering will be slightly tweaked. Okay, over instead of 12 months, instead of overall leadership focus, performance focus, 6 months, 7 months, and deliverables redefined. And within this group, if I find someone with that potential, I will still do the full offering. You don't have to pay, but I will do it because it's about potential. The coaching is all about identifying potential and investing in them. And I really do not want this to basically come in conflict with my own belief.
Excellent point. And thanks for sharing that.
So there are a couple of more comments. Nimesh, do you want to take those, or should you want to
go
move
ahead.
on?
I think this is all about getting people to talk more than to show them what I have prepared.
Sure.
In the meantime, while we were discussing, the inflation just went down because somebody increased the interest rate beyond our comfort. Having said this, maybe have Sushima read the comment, please.
Sure. So Poonam says that I think it needs to be made hard to get. Okay. Now her take is that the very fact that most coaches are offering coaching as a freebie kind of makes it look, makes people look at it as something which is not really valuable. Okay. So we can, of course, challenge ourselves by linking payments to results. Service and business are two different things. So that's
very interesting. And I would say your comments have been taken in the right context. And the only thing I would encourage you to think is, while you're 100% right that these are two different things, but imagine what's happening at your end. You are providing service of coaching, and you're also responsible for the business of coaching that you are managing. So it starts to converge at the coach's end, while it may be two different things at the organizational level. And having said this, even if they are two different things, unfortunately, one overlaps the other in terms of influence. And largely speaking, when it comes to money flow, the margins, the revenue, the profitability, um, the kind of commitments that they have for increment in business would always stand a priority over whatever they consider. I'm carefully using the word whatever they consider as expenses. Okay, so as long as coaching is an expense, um, this treatment continues. Okay, even if they say it's an investment. Um, so while they continue to say that we invest in our people, in their P&Ls and balance sheets, it continues to remain expense. And largely, when the balance sheet is put up for review to the people where it matters, so for the promoters, when they look at the balance sheet, the expenses would be out, and what would be left is a loss, and they get a pounding of their life, right? So wherever it is accounted as expense, you're likely to see solid resistance for any continued payments, especially when the situation is like what you see on the screen.
Ashok
Nimesh,
says that service as a free promotion to create awareness about coaching is actually expanding the market. What do you have to say about that,
Yes,
Nimesh?
I think so. It's a fairly debatable. I have heard many times that we ourselves um, lower the value of the community when we do something for free, etc., etc. Um, while that thought, I would tend to agree. Having said this, it all depends on your business model. So, so Geo offered call for free, and it continues to offer call for free, right? And look at their business model. So it all largely depends on what your business model is. Without making any blanket labels, whether something is good or bad, I think we all need to start reflecting on what is the business model I want to follow. Okay. Um, Very soon you're likely to see some disruption happening within the coaching industry as well, where somebody may come out and say, hey, we'll do coaching for your people absolutely free of cost. And then you start wondering what happened. Okay, because they may come in with a different business model. That means that linear thought of saying, okay, the number of hours I'm spending to sit in front of the coach divided by the number of hours in a day, so 8 divided by 5 coaching conversations, 1.5, and then per month, this is my cost, blah, blah, blah. So that is a linear business model. Cost plus overheads plus profits equal to selling price. Maybe we are departing from that completely, right? Maybe you look around and you'll see a lot of businesses which don't calculate their selling price based on a linear equation. Okay, whether it is Amazon, or whether it is Google, or whether it is Geo, or whether it is Netflix, none of them have a linear calculation when they decide the selling price, right? So maybe business acumen tells me that there's something which we aren't doing as a community. I'm just going to leave that as a thought without really getting deeper into it.
Nimesh, one more thought, Sripad here. What about diversification? For example, in addition to coaching, I can also be a certified financial planner, or I could be a lean coach. So in the bad times when there is a squeeze, I can be doing more of a lean coaching, wherein I consult with the companies how to cut cost, how to cut process time, how to cut expenses.
Sure.
So some kind of a diversification in addition to coaching.
Sounds very interesting and sounds doable actually. Okay, I want to pick this up further and move up a little, because there are a couple of questions I want the audience to really think on, and I'm very happy with the way we're progressing on this. So interest rate up leads to inflation lower. We already know this. The exact opposite would be interest rate down while the upper limit of inflation is hit. Okay, and which would mean that at some point there would be flood in the market about money, right? This would bring back the color to the flowers, but if it is not stopped, it leads to higher inflation. And this is exactly the opposite situation that we have been discussing so far. Now, please tell me, as the inflation is rising, as everybody receives more money, what is going to happen at your client's end? What exactly are they going to expect you to do? I'll repeat. There is a flood of money. Everybody seems to have liquidity. Your customer is growing double the estimated sales target. They are in a frenzy. They are recruiting more people. Chances are that the salaries of these people have been increased 3 times. They've received a fat bonus. That's the situation. Now here you are in that assignment where you had promised them that, okay, I'll cut costs and I'll possibly offer a group coaching as well. And in the meantime, something like this happened, right? What would you do?
So some comments coming into your question, Nimesh.
Yeah.
So Arvind says, deliver the moon.
All right,
Okay.
Arvind, is it deliver or is it promise? I don't know.
No, I think it is deliver. I think there is a big debate going on now about results, and we are talking of very eminent coaches who deliver that, who operate at a very senior level.
Yes.
So I have had a couple of experiences on that where they just wanted me to change it, the whole thing. I said, give me the controlling power also. No, then I mean, you guys are getting paid 1 crore of rupees and you couldn't do it. You're expecting a coach to have one session and do it. It's not possible. So
Right.
stuff like that. Yep.
Indeed. Any other comments? What would you do? Because the situation just changed. While we were all discussing, let's cut costs, let's talk about group coaching. In the meantime, the central bank felt, oh, there's just the inflation has gone too low. The hooter has sounded. Maybe we should reduce the interest rate. They did reduce the interest rate. It flooded the marketplace. There is rising inflation. Now remember, some people aren't really comfortable, but the companies may still survive, and they may be on a rocket launcher sitting there. How would you then be prepared for what's coming? What should you propose?
So people are saying that this will, they would want to grow further, accelerated growth. So more budgets, more coaching, more spend, more investment. Poonam says maybe they'll expect us to continue to provide service at the same rate. So
Yes.
more volume work. So they might say, okay, we're giving you more volume. So can you lower your prices further?
Yeah. Yes. And then they may also expect a few more things. Like suddenly they may come out and say, don't you have an app where our participants can log in? Because we've just got a quotation. Of course, they are a little costlier than you are, but we are really inclined to use technology here. Now, where did this inclination come from? It comes from the excess liquidity, which is now sitting everywhere. And suddenly their budgets have just shot up, okay, at the back end. They don't tell you that. But the kind of questions that may come in is, are you using technology anywhere? Are you accredited for some tool like MBTI or some other tool which our participants can take up? And suddenly they will start looking for all sorts of certifications, all sorts of psychometric tools, everything which can be fit into that budget, which is now bloating. And it's interesting because both of these you have experienced in the past. Having said this, both of these alternate in reality. That means there is times when things are up and then there are times when things are down. My question is, all along, your skill remained your skill. You were as passionate about coaching as you were always. You always had the intention of allowing and helping the coachee discover for herself what is her true worth. You were always there to facilitate the journey. Nothing changed as far as you were concerned. But look at the situation in both these scenarios. And it seems that everything has changed. My question to you is, how do you prepare yourself as a coach to handle this business environment? What should be step number one? I want to actually, while you're thinking on this question, I want to show you a graph, okay? And there's an interesting question on this graph. So what is this graph? Take a look at this graph and tell me, what exactly are we talking? Is it the same thing that we have discussed so far, or is it something different? The red line says demand and inflation go up while the cost of capital goes down. That means while you opened the gates for water to flow through. Everybody used this liquidity to jack up their business. They grew, and then suddenly somebody turned the handle upwards because too much of inflation was hitting everyone, and thereby the down cycle started. And then somebody did exactly the reverse, and so the next up cycle started. I don't know whether this graph makes sense to you at all, but if it does, then I want to ask a question. Which point in this graph do you think is the time when the client has maximum money? Which point in the graph do you think client has maximum money?
So when the cost of capital is at its lowest, Kanan says.
Perfect. Why do you say that? You're right. And why do you say that?
It's easy to borrow at that price and bet on growth.
Yes. So that means liquidity would be highest when the cost of capital is lowest, right? At this point, maybe.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is, while this is happening, while liquidity is very high, while the customer is having huge amount of growth in business, what would be their behavior in the marketplace? What exactly are they looking for while this is happening? If any comment comes up, read it, and I will encourage people to unmute and emote. Don't worry, there's nothing wrong or right. You'll just listen to what
So
you.
there's a question about the graph.
Please go ahead. Ask.
Okay, is there a lag between these two in practice, or is it exactly like what you've shown? So is this reality?
Good question. I think the relationship is real. The dimensions may vary. I don't know whether it makes sense to you, but the relationship between demand, inflation, and cost of capital is absolutely true.
So the question was from Shripad. So Shripad, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in if you want to ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, a follow-up question.
Okay, so there's some more comments coming in.
Yeah.
Operating. Okay, so.
Hi, Nimesh. If I can add to my question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, Shripad here. So I was asking whether there's a time lag. So when cost of capital goes down, is there a time before the market reacts and we actually start seeing people realizing that they can now spend more? Is there a time lag there as well as
Good question.
at the
It's
other
a good
end?
question. So I would put it in one simple line that depending on the industry that you're a part of, the lag changes. So it could be almost instantaneous if you're in the basic front-end industry, let's say food, soap, daily essentials. Okay, then the impact is almost immediate. However, if you are on the luxury end of the product or services, the impact is eventual because you are a little distance away from all of this liquidity. Does it make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
And yet, whenever this hits us, here is how the client is going to behave. Okay, take a look at what comes up on the screen now. Now, while you're preparing for this world, you're trying to see how best you can serve the moon, as someone said. Guess what is happening to the mindset of your coachee? What is happening at the back end? What's happening at the operations level?
There's a willingness to invest, I think.
Sure, organization is willing to invest for sure.
Yeah.
And what is happening to the people who you're coaching? So now I'm coming to that.
They are under a pump because the volumes are high.
Sure. And the best way to demonstrate this is through this. Take a look. And that means as a coach, you're likely to face super stressed coaches in your conversations because there's just tremendous pressure on them at the operational level, at the sales level, in terms of delivery. The clients are sitting on their heads. They're saying you're taking too long, guys. You're too inefficient. The HR team is going to go bonkers because everybody wants people as on yesterday, and that to double the amount of people. Chances are they're going to ask you, can you recommend a few people? We desperately need more manpower. And this is the scenario you're likely to inherit as you walk into that situation, right? So a lot of times we as coaches tend to react to these situations rather than anticipate. And the moment you start anticipating, I think we've made a sense of progress on in terms of business acumen.
So there's a comment from Sunil Khelkar who says they might be a little laid back also.
Possibly. Having said this, I think the business won't allow them to be laid back for the simple reason there's just too much of pressure from the customer end. Everybody's consuming, okay, and everybody has money, so the aspirations are high. Remember what our conversations led to. People said, I'll commit for a car, I'll possibly buy a home, I'm going to spend more on my holidays. Now, all of those would mean more business across the domain. All right, so chances are we as coaches may be laid back. That I agree, because whoever you've asked for coaching has agreed to your terms and conditions. So you are wondering, acha, abhi to sab kuch to ho gaya. Now what is there to strive for? But the chances are the same people who agreed to your terms and conditions are going to come back to you a little later saying, hey, do you have something better to offer? Do you think you can bring in a foreign organization with some international coaches onto your bandwagon, and suddenly it'll surprise you because ye kahan se aa gaya. But that's how it can happen.
Okay, so Sunil has clarified further. Very interesting. They might be laid back in terms of the action on working on their coaching.
Oh yes. So now I understand where you're coming from, Sunil. I would just not use. I mean, it'll be unfair to say laid back, but I understand where you're coming from. And chances are they've just got too many things on their head. Look at the expression of people on the screen, and you know what's going on. But yes.
So I have a point here, Nimesh. The thing is that if the organization is pumping up for expansion and investing ahead of the curve, the fact is that everybody is obviously invested in doing that. So a couple of things that come to my mind is, yes, the people might be stressed, but more than distress, it could be eustress. The second thing is that the fact that people may not have the time, and coaching may take a backseat because at that point in time, delivery of results become more important. The third thing is that organizations seldom invest in. I mean, now things are changing, but organizations per se do not invest in coaching in de-stressing employees.
Sure.
They are doing it because they have got a stake in it.
Sure.
So if it's performance related, they will do that. If they want to grow leaders within the organization and they feel that the person is not ready, then they will get into coaching and those kind of actions. But getting somebody to coach people because they are stressed, I haven't been fortunate enough to come across such a situation. I know that organizations are providing services like yoga and things like that. These are the progressive organizations. But I don't know of organizations, investing ahead of the curve and saying that, all right, our employees are stressed. And that, if at all they do, they would do it as, again, a systemic thing, as a group thing, rather than, one individual at a time.
Quite possible, and you have experience, I'm sure, to back it up. So what would interestingly be also true, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that they would have access to resources at that moment. Only thing is they may not have the inclination to go exactly the way you mentioned, that okay, we need to do something to de-stress our people. That's where they may say, what de-stress? We've just given them a fat bonus. I'm sure they are all celebrating or something like that. So then the point is, how do we offer services which bridge the aspiration of doing something greater for our employees, where they themselves may not accept the fact that everybody's stressed. and yet they are willing to go out and experiment or probably spend on some things which is going to help them really go ahead and deliver more output from their people without mentioning the word de-stressed, because I think the objection could be the fact that if they say it is de-stressing, that means they're admitting that things are getting stressed out.
So my experience is that, when that is happening, that's why I said use stress, which is that, it's good stress.
Sure.
Everybody is on a high. You see promotions happening, you see growth happening, you see that the company is moving forward. So, money will come in and all that. So even employees at that point in time enjoy that stress, do not necessarily feel is as a distress. Because they are peaking at that time. It's only when things really get to a head and then, when it's kind of coming down or flattening a bit is when the stress really starts showing up, if at all, and people may successfully deal with it or may not deal with it. And if you are at that point in time, if you're already in a coaching assignment, then you can work with your coaching and help them, literally like in anticipation, and help them towards that.
Sure.
But
excellent.
I mean, my experience is that organizations seldom see it as that, that they need to help their employees with. But as I said, I have been out of, corporate world for nearly a decade now, so things might have changed.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that comment.
Nimesh, may I interrupt for a moment with your permission? Okay, so for everybody, Tushima will be putting up the CCO claim link in the chat box in a bit. And Nimesh, that's all from my side.
All right, thank you.
Just wanted to remind that.
So before I go on, I think I had requested Anu to give us a breakout room space for an activity. But Anu, I'm just going to relieve you of that duty, because I believe the whole group has got going without too much of congestion out here. So I'm going to actually throw the question which I was going to throw for a breakout room activity out here, right up. Okay.
Okay,
I hope
excellent,
that's
because I was wondering
Yes.
when is my task of breakout room going to happen.
Yeah. So
good. I think we have a good interactive crowd.
Oh yes, I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I believe it's better we have it right here so that we get those comments as they come. So here is my question. Okay, we've seen this now. We in the game we saw a ton of water coming through. Okay, I want to know what exactly do you think that water was? I gave you the clouds, then I showed you the sun, and then I showed you two pipes coming releasing huge quantities of water. Um, that's actually the current situation. What am I referring to?
So there's extra liquidity in the market. I mean, people have more money in hand. Everybody has more money. The bank, you can borrow. You can borrow at virtually no cost. You can buy a house at 6.5% interest.
So there is
a lot of
huge
money.
amount of liquidity that has been released in the global economy. Okay, while the number looks very small, it is 5.7 lakh crores. Okay, and dollars, not rupees. So since March 2020, ever since the lockdown has started, the US Federal Reserve has released 5.7 lakh crores globally through United States by printing the dollars and spending them. Now, if this is the kind of liquidity that has been released, please tell me what is likely to happen now and going forward, even in India, and why?
People will keep buying. I mean,
I'm hearing you, but I'm hearing you a little faintly. I don't know. Maybe it's because your mic is a little away. Do you help speak up, please?
One moment. I'll just.
Okay, let me repeat the question while I'm sure he's sorting out the mic. 5.7 lakh crore dollars released in the international market by sheer printing of dollars and spending. Okay, some part of those dollars did float into India, if you remember, when Facebook bought a stake in Jio, and Reliance raised close to about 1.3 lakh crores rupees, which came via Facebook, and that was a part of this printed money. What could happen in the marketplace because of this excess liquidity?
Inflation goes up.
Very good. Yes, inflation is around the corner. Okay, it is just around the corner. And with inflation, first comes good news. And what would be the good news? Remember, we just saw it a little while back.
More
with
money.
The saxophone playing and people asking for much better things and bigger things and cars and all sorts of
demand goes up.
Incidentally, that would also mean that your client is going to expect you to deliver far more in terms of reach in the organization. They're saying we want to cover 200 people now. Do you have a team? And this is going to be a very normal question to ask for them, saying, yeah, you've been fantastic and our people love you, but the problem is we need more of you. Now, how do we cover 200 people? Is there a solution that you have? These kind of questions, please expect in the next 6 months, maybe 9 months, who knows? And it is going to be exactly in the opposite direction to what we have seen after the lockdown, because while the pandemic hit us, remember, the RBI was sitting in the position which you are seeing on the screen, where the interest rate was at its lowest, liquidity was already pumped into the economy, and suddenly now there is a huge pumping of liquidity, which only means the amount of money that is going to start floating around is going to be much higher than what you see now. You can already see that happening in the stock market, and eventually it'll come down to your customers, and then you better be prepared for it. So that's my closing question for the day. We are already close to 8:30. We'll spend about 10 minutes for Q&A if at all there are there, and then we'll of course take the poll, etc., whatever is coming up. But my question is, how do you prepare yourself for this liquidity which has just been released? What should you be doing?
Build capacity.
Great, good thought. Build capacity. It could mean possibly reach out to coaches who are there on this platform as well. Go out and make sure that you have a bunch of people ready to serve the customer in case the customer comes with an enhanced requirement, and customer is likely to come.
There's some more comments coming in.
Yes.
Your question. Okay. Priya says collaborate. Shalini says build network. Ashok says achhe din aayenge. Mohan says collaborate and stay interdependent.
Indeed. Any other thoughts that cross your mind? Because right now it seems like a distant thing. I mean, we're just getting out of trouble zone for the last 6 months or so, or probably a little longer. And here I am trying to give you exactly opposite situation that's coming up. Either I am crazy, or whatever we're discussing is crazy stuff, or maybe there is some element of truth. Who knows? Time will tell us. But if it does come, we need to be ready with the answer. It'll be too late to react then, once the client asks for it. It's always better to anticipate it and be ready, or propose it yourselves, for that's what they will always remember.
So there's some more coming in. Anu says deepen relationships and cross-sell. Sananda says build a pipeline, business development. Super. Right? Meghna says build a proposition to demonstrate value.
Excellent.
Anadurai adds needs thorough thinking and strategizing. Yeah, to be prepared, to be lucky.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And he says luck is when opportunity meets
indeed
preparedness.
Indeed.
Yeah, lovely point. So on that note, can we float the poll?
Excellent. Yes, please go ahead. And I would be happy to take questions if at all there are some.
Yeah, hi Nimesh. I have a couple of points that I want to mention. Something which is not related to this, but I think one of the learnings is that we should strive to go to companies who are relatively not directly proportional to this business cycle, who have a coaching mindset, irrespective of what cycle there is. It could be less or more, but it will always be there.
Sure.
So that is the first thing. The second point that came to my mind was when you said about lot of businesses there, etc. At that particular time, people are not worried about business, and they're in such a high that the need to change is the lowest.
Indeed, very valid point.
There is absolutely no need to source business. The issue is really pipeline within the organization. Is production happening? Are they coming on time? Are people going on time? I had that experience with an insurance company. In a couple of years back, insurance was booming. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry went, and somebody was there to buy insurance. But now suddenly it has reached a level where everybody is running. So my take from this whole discussion is, when something like this happens, paint a scenario of what would happen after this, and what are the really the big requirements that your client may require or the coaching may require post this, or what can we set right so that we are prepared for the future.
Excellent point. Excellent point,
These are
sir.
two takeaways.
And just to share with you, for all you know, the insurance guys are back on the boil again. So February was the month where personal protection business has gone up by 21%. And this is latest data. So get ready for those phone calls coming back.
That would be because of the March ending, Nimesh, and we are that cycle is still not gone on. We are still a March ending. The insurance is still a March ending thing. I mean, so, you are on. You are switched off, Nimesh. You are on mute.
Nimesh, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. What you're saying is perfectly valid. Having said this, remember, these numbers are with respect to the same month last year. So whatever is the phenomenon was the same last year. It is March end to March end. And yet there is a 21% growth. So who knows, right? Yes, I'm done. I'm just waiting for you to take over, Poonam.
Thank you, Nimesh. Thank you so much. And I'm sure there has been such great interaction that we totally lost track of time. It's 8:30 already, and I still feel that we can go on hearing your such great insights, Nimesh. So I just want to reiterate that Tushima has shared the link to claim the CCUs in the chat box. Please access that, save that link, and share your form to claim your CCUs. Anu had launched a poll. I hope you have taken the poll. And just once, may I request all of you to put your videos on so that we can take a nice, lovely picture of the entire group. And then if you still have any questions unanswered, you can stay back for 15 minutes. We will keep holding on to Nimesh, and you can stay back to take any questions or share your experiences and insights and your learnings. Thank you.
Requesting everybody to put your cameras on and put your pretty smiles on. As usual, I shall click a nice picture.
Yeah, I think Arvind's finished fixing his hair, so I think we're all ready.
So I still have some people who still not on camera, so it'll just take 30 seconds. Just give us your pretty smiles and please put your cameras on. Okay, going one, going twice, pretty smiles, and thank you.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Anu. And before we hand it over back to Nimesh for any debrief questions, if he has, or take up any further questions, I just want to share with the group that continuing our theme of enabling coaches, we also have another session coming up on March 31st. It's a special session again on marketing for us coaches. So please be on the lookout for the communication and register as soon as we share the links with you. And now invite you to stay back and back to you all and Nimesh for any questions, sharing, and insights.
Thank you, and which also means if you have to exit at this point or any point from now, feel free to do that as well. We're just staying back to get and help participants to reflect, and if there are any further questions that they may have, plus if there are any learnings that they wish to share with us and with the other fraternity. Is that correct, Poonam?
That's right.
All right. Over to you. I'm very happy to have such interactive session, and I'm really pleased with the way things went, because I was not expecting as much of conversation that we had. So much so that I actually at some point I decided, because I have the whole chart in front of me as to what all I need to do, and I know what had to go out of the window to accommodate those conversations. And so I relieved Anu of giving us that breakout room. So back to the point that we were discussing, and if there are any burning questions, anything, any points of disagreement, would love to hear that out, because there are always two sides to the coin.
And while we're waiting for the questions, Nimesh, is there a very important question that we may have forgotten to ask you?
Yeah, that's a
in
good
your
one.
experience.
So that's a good one. I think of everything that we discussed, I think if we were to really make a list of things that you would want to observe in the business environment, which will help you anticipate the behavior of the client and hence prop up the business acumen quotient, what would those be? Okay, so what are those 3 or 4, maybe 5 things which you would want to keep a lookout for all the while? Okay. Interestingly, all of this information is available for free, so you don't have to really pay anyone. You do not have any consultant, and you would get this information at the click of a button. I have shared those in splinters in my presentation. I would love if somebody would want to actually make a list of those 4 or 5 things that we've discussed earlier. And then I'll add on a few more, of course. Let's say you had to identify 5 things you want to always keep a watch out for as a coach to anticipate expectations and behavior of the client. And we already realized that those 5 things have to be from the environment and not necessarily from the client themselves. What would those be?
I think one would be to keep track of what's happening in the economy, in the market, in that particular industry, and with the client's organization. It could be that everything else is fine, but there's a problem within the organization in terms of, it might be a merger or it could be anything. So be on top of that at all times so that you can anticipate. And even if you are not able to offer more services or whatever, but the engagement that you already have, you can bring more value to it.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Shalini says repo rates, and yes, Shalini, I think you're spot on. Any kind of change in the interest rate by the RBI is a trigger, and this happens every once in 6 weeks. It's called monetary policy review. And you don't have to really look for the RBI website. You just need to keep your eyes on the news, and it is prominently displayed by everyone, because even those who don't understand it will talk about it. So you just need to pick up the cues from what is being discussed about repo rate, which is nothing but the interest rate. All right. So let's say repo rate is what I heard. I also heard Sunanda saying we need to look at the situation or the business trend in the environment. I will add one from my own side. We must track inflation. Okay, inflation is declared once a month, fourth Thursday, across all news channels and newspapers. Okay, and there's nothing that takes more than 5 minutes for you to find out what's the inflation rate. Now, the upper limit and the lower limit, which we told you in the game. For India, the lower limit is 2%, the upper is 6%. That means as long as inflation remains between 2 and 6, RBI doesn't do anything to interest rates. But the moment it exceeds 6, or if it goes below 2, they come out and change the handle. And that's when all of that behavior changes happen. So watch out for the band of inflation that we tolerate. We tolerate 2 to 6%. Ideally, we want it at 4%. And if you're from another economy, that band would change. So it is not the same for all economies in total. Gold and bullion rates, says Shalini. Well, I don't know how you're going to relate to this, but if you can elaborate, Shalini. And Shalini is going to later on scold me for putting her in the spotlight, but nevertheless.
No. Sorry. I was just trying to come off mute.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of gives you an idea, again, for typically what I've been kind of trying to get a handle on of how it is playing out in the US, and therefore this rate keeps going up and down, impacts our markets, impacts our liquidity and our interest rates and everything. So I'm kind of trying to get a sense on that. They do something in their treasury, right? I mean, like I'm saying, I'm still in the early stages. But yeah, it kind of, just suddenly there is liquidity and they kind of bring down the rates, and then the gold rates come down. And then, like I'm saying, it's just kind of one thing leads to another.
So let me give you a hint, Shalini.
Huh.
Gold is a hedge.
So like they have just gone down right now, right? Like something like a 20% knockoff.
Yes.
So
I'll
in
give
this
you a
last
hint.
week.
I'll give you a hint as to how to link it. Okay.
Huh.
Gold is a hedge against the dollar.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
so remember, whenever they anticipate that dollar will fall, gold tends to appreciate.
Yeah.
Now, dollar tends to fall when the US economy doesn't do well.
Correct.
If US economy doesn't do well, anybody who exports to US economy won't do well.
Right.
Okay, so you could connect gold prices to behavior changes within your clients, depending on what your clients do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So we have inflation, we have cost of funds or repo rate, as mentioned, that we need to watch out for. Is there anything else that you need to keep a track of to anticipate client behavior change?
Is it Sripad Sontake from Pune? Is it currency like between rupee and dollar that impacts import heavy industries versus export heavy industries?
It's a fair point. If you're looking at it purely, let's say from an Indian enterprise, yes, it makes a lot of sense to track the rupee versus dollar. The more the rupee falls, okay, the more the trouble for organizations who are based in India, because the costs would tend to go up. Okay, so for example, 2013, rupee fell from 54 to 69. That is about 25% devaluation in exactly 2 months. Okay, and as soon as that happened, the Indian manufacturing sector went into a down cycle for a good 2.5 years. Right, so that's the impact of a falling rupee, and it makes sense to track it.
I think two more things to watch out for. I don't know if they make sense. One is the government commitment to spends on infrastructure or infusion, kind of money spending, right? Because that's likely to generate employment and get the economy back. That is another thing to possibly watch out for.
Yes. Yes, valid point. I think if you check where the expenses are made, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is railways, you could really start
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
money flow.
So organizational change is also a trigger, right, Nimesh? So, in terms
It
of
can.
internal restructuring or
Or
acquisitions.
acquisitions, or
Yeah.
takeover, or
Takeover.
merger.
Geographies getting merged. So
Yes, that could be a very
it
interesting lead
expands the
indicator.
internal, cultural scope of the organization also.
Or
That
it
also
may
becomes.
change the decision maker altogether, and one needs to be aware of it as to what is the larger scheme of things, especially when
Yeah.
mergers happen.
Yeah.
So possibly, yes, you're right. For example, Idea and Vodafone combining forces would mean a lot to somebody who's having either one of these two as client.
Yeah. Also political and social changes, activism, risks. So for example, I think now in the US, coaching for health related things it's become a fairly mainstream thing.
Sure, sure. I think one thing which as Indians we must not forget to track is the monsoon. Okay, because whether we like it or no, whether we want it or no, um, whether we accept it or no, monsoons still really influence money flow inside India. Okay, we have two crop cycles: the Kharif and Rabi. Uh, Kharif is
That's true. That's true.
the monsoon crop. If you have bumper Kharif, suddenly the rural India starts spending left, right, and center. And if you are a FMCG client as your client, FMCG company as your client, suddenly they are hunky dory because the sales start zooming up in rural India. Uh, and hence, monsoon timely arrival of monsoon is the first trigger, and then harvesting is the next trigger. And even if you are not a farmer, and even if your client is not into agri produce, it doesn't matter. What matters is how close they are to this money flow from rural India. And 65% of the population is engaged in agriculture, and I would take monsoon very seriously in India, very, very seriously. So excellent too. I think we've painted a list of five, I think, but which would be great. Um, and I can see the summary right there in front. Thank you for that summary. Um, any closing comments? Anybody who wants to express how did you feel about the experience? Anything that you would want to tell us in terms of what we can improve? It will be my pleasure to hear it out.
Yeah, Nimesh, I think I just want to add to what Anu has written is what Sunanda mentioned, which is, the smell of the place, the organization that you're in.
Oh, yeah.
What is the smell? I mean, the higher you are coaching, the easier it is for you to know what is happening. If you're at the middle level, it's a little difficult. So I think some of us, when we get the feedback sessions with the managers or the stakeholders, we are collecting 360-degree feedback. We sometimes restrict ourselves to the feedback per se, but I think the entire behavior gives you much more. About
Indeed.
what is the culture, what is happening, what is the sense you're getting of what is happening in the whole thing, and how the whole process is going to go. So
Agree with you.
I think the Sunanda's point about the place or the environment, and your point about Voda and this
Idea.
idea,
Yes.
or so many others.
Yeah.
I can remember I used to coach for a NGO, and there's this new law by the government that as of 1st of April, the percentage that they can spend on administrative cost has been slashed to a certain percent. So you cannot. So cost of people who are at the headquarters, etc., have to be limited to 15, and 85% has to, or 85 or 80% has to directly go into actual, benefits for the supposedly cause for which the money has been got from outside. So there is no money for coaching. So except a couple of organizations, so which are UN based. So my point is that all these things play a part in where the money is coming from and how the whole thing works.
Indeed, and I couldn't agree with you more, because there are a host of variables, and one of the variables, and an important one, would be the sense of the place. So what you're saying and what Sunanda was saying, I completely agree to it.
I think, Nimish, may I think before Poonam steps in, I know, I just wanted to kind of say this. No, we are the organizers and you are kind of close to us within our team, but I must compliment you with such a simple diagram. We spent, 2 hours understanding, I think, one of complicated and difficult concepts in such a easy way. So in fact, that water tank is in a way kind of imprinted in my head, and I don't think I'm going to forget this, that lever up means inflation down, and so on and so forth, right? So I must compliment you with this such a simplistic way you tried to kind of navigate through a supposedly daunting topic for at least a person like me who would be running away from very heavy, economics or money related topics. So I just
Thank you.
wanted to step in and compliment you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. And I would like to second with whatever you said. Totally, numbers have always scared me. And, when you step into a business as a coach, so I just think about coaching, but then business is also an important aspect of it. And a lot of insights, lot of aha moments in this session today. So really, thank you, Nimesh. Please accept sincere thanks from all of us today. Today's session has been one of the most engaging sessions, very different from our usual webinars and masterclass, and I look forward to more from you. So
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.